But don't worry, we'll still have Miles Fuels, our delicious food range and Simply Great coffee. My customers kickstart their morning with our famous breakfast burritos. I'm Jennifer from Circle K Macroom. Circle K, new name, same people.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
All right, you're very welcome back. We're going to be talking rugby for the next little while. You can catch us on all our social channels, or you can get your text in to 53106. Andy Dunne is alongside me in studio. Matt Williams on the line as well. Afternoon, Matt.
Afternoon, guys.
So Ireland are the Ireland are the Grand Slam champions, Six Nations, Triple Crown, Pro 14, European Cup champions, and now winning a Test series down in Australia for the first time in 1979. Turns out we're pretty good at this game.
Not a bad year, is it? Great achievement. Great achievement from everyone in Irish rugby. It gives you a true picture of the growth when I was coaching that young man sitting next to you there 20 years ago. Rugby, we had 800 people turn up at Leinster Munster, and now, through a lot of hard work by generations of players, coaches and things, the island's on very close to the top of the tree. Full credit to everyone, especially the current team. They played magnificent.
Andy, in terms of all the good things that have happened in rugby, to go down to the Southern Hemisphere after such a gruelling season for so many of these players, and it to be so tight in that final quarter of the game and still grind it out, where does this rank in terms of achievements over the year?
Over the course of this season?
Over the course of this season.
I suppose on the back of the physical bashing that they've taken, most of the guys on that team today have probably got in 25 to 30 games this year, but most of the games are high level. If they've missed one or two, it's a League Pro 14 game. So I think it's an incredible achievement to, just from purely in terms of physicality and also in terms of the physicality required to win the way we're winning. It's relentless, and it's quite unbelievable that they can keep turning up and producing. Albeit they didn't in that first test, but in the remaining two, it's quite astounding. Can you talk to me about that then, about the physicality that Ireland need to be able to win games? Is it at a step above most other teams at international level? I think what they ask of themselves? Yes, I think so. You mentioned all the successes we've had in this season, and ultimately we're second in the world. In terms of work rate and physicality, you could argue we're first in the world as a rating. New Zealand were 21-14 up today after 45 minutes. They'd scored 3 tries and they'd spent 3 minutes and 11 seconds in the French 22. So they've such economy in terms of when they play. They can break into a team very easily, very quickly. In the Irish setup, we've got 67% possession. We scored 3 tries in 3 test matches, and we've probably that. I hope that doesn't come across as a negative. I think. Well, I was going to say, is that a negative? I think it's very, very difficult to sustain that with 18 months going to the World Cup. But then again, we got our breaks. Guys are going to get rest, and it may be the way that we decide we're just going to go with that style and go for it in the World Cup. We're exceptionally hard to beat, but if matched physically now, like we were in the first test. There can still be a question mark about our creativity. I know I spoke about it previously. I think Matty did last week. It's a potential issue, but I don't want to detract from an incredible season. Yeah, in many ways, Matt, we're probably picking holes. Ireland won the game 2016. Johnny Sexton kicked 5 penalties. CJ Stander scored the try. But it did seem as though there were a lot of similarities with several of the Six Nations games where Ireland spent quite a bit of time in the opposition 22, tried to bludgeon their way over the line, didn't work, win a penalty, but never really took too many risks inside the 22. Is there enough creativity when they get into that danger zone?
Well, I just want to reiterate what Andy says. It's a great achievement. You don't want to take away from it. I've been saying for many years that if Ireland play that style, they'll win a lot of games, and especially the Six Nations at the time of year when it's on probably favours that. But it's not going to win you a World Cup. So they've got to decide on a style or where they believe that style will take them. There's 18 months between now, a little bit more than the next World Cup. So they've got to come up with an idea on how they're going to play, and they've got to grow. If they stay where they are, they won't go well at the next World Cup. Why? Well, let's look at the last World Cup, and that's what Ireland were doing before. They just weren't scoring enough tries in the games. And at the last World Cup, you had to be scoring above 3 to 4 tries a game to beat the big teams. That's just the numbers. The only game that didn't happen was South Africa and New Zealand, where it was a bucketed rain. The rest of it was a lot of tries, a lot of scoring. Statistically, to beat New Zealand, no one's beaten New Zealand unless they've scored minimum of 3 tries. And that's what Ireland did, that's what Australia do. So you've just, if you're going to win at that big stage, you've got to increase the number of tries you score. Now, you don't have to play barbarian rugby, but you do have to somehow increase that. They play a very low-risk game. It's not pretty to watch. I sort of don't like it that way. I'm a bit more of a purist like that. But you have to say this year it's been effective. But, and let's put a but in it, drop goal against France to win. If Scotland had taken their 3 passes, different game. Stockdale doesn't take that last intercept, to Wales win. Couple of decisions today really went Ireland's way. So they're winning the series and they deserve huge credit for it. But they're not smashing and putting the competitions away. It's really close run thing. Exciting, dramatic, and again, they did win. It's full credit to them. But if you're asking what's going to go well at the next World Cup, there's got to be growth in the side between now and then.
It does feel at the end of every game we're almost saying, if this had happened, Ireland could have lost that game. But if it doesn't happen, is that down to their defence? Is that down to something ingrained in this side now, that they have a confidence within themselves that even with that last Australian attack, there's such a different confidence level watching Ireland compared to, say, the All Blacks game at the Aviva 3-4 years ago? You always just have that confidence they're going to hang on.
It's the psychology of it. I think there's an intangible in the team now that has developed that winner's mentality, and if you can bottle that, people have been looking to do that for hundreds of years in sport. We know how to win. However, we're exhausting to watch, and in a really positive and emotional way. It's nail biter stuff, and I just, how many times and for how long or how protracted a period can we sustain that? With 18 months to go to the World Cup, to be specific about it, rather, it's like a concertina effect. We get into the opposition 22. It's so condensed for space, and we bang the door down relentlessly, phase after phase, and more often than not, we've been successful and scored in this 2018 season, particularly Six Nations, and then those second 2 tests in Australia. If we attack from deeper where there's more space and we learn to improve our offloading skills, I think we'll get more mileage. It'll be less energy expenditure for guys in the team. And I think that's one of the flip sides of attacking like that. It's affected our defence. Apart from today, our defence has looked a bit tired and a bit loose, and we've conceded up to 3 tries in many games. Today, I was delighted for Andy Farrell. The team looked a lot more together in their defensive systems. We shot out of the line from wide, but we did it as a collective. There wasn't just one guy getting exposed, shooting out the line. There were many people coming forward. The line speed was excellent. So that was a big plus today. If you're going to play that very, very relentless kind of one-out rugby, physical attacking game, you've got to be sure that it's not going to affect your defence in terms of you're so tired after you've coughed up the ball that you can no longer defend. Right. And we were able to show we've got energy on both sides of the ball today, and again, that was a plus coming out of today. But the question mark is how much have we got in the tank with 18 months to go, having done all this? Yeah,
Matt, Joe Schmidt doesn't strike me as the type of coach that's waiting for a defeat before he'll change things. That he wants to move on, and he wants to capitalise on this and try and improve Ireland over the next 15 months. But is it a simple transition for Schmidt as a coach to get Ireland to take a few more risks, to be a bit more creative?
No, it's not, and that's why you can't wait until the World Cup. It comes down, if we compare it to what New Zealand do, a lot of what New Zealand do is based on footwork before contact and getting into the space between players. That produces, one, an opportunity to offload, or two, you get fast ball because the attacking player hasn't got someone around his upper body. He can get a quick placement, the ball's gone. They put pace on the game really, really well, the New Zealanders. France, traditionally, that's what they did. Now, they're trying to get back to that, but their skill level's nowhere near the level of the New Zealanders at every aspect of the game. Now, Ireland, I think they've made a decision saying, we're just not going to get there. We're not that skillful. So what they're doing, it comes on to Andy's point, by having this rushing defence that's compact and comes up, it's not allowing teams to do footwork. It's not allowing Curtly Beale today, who was playing like, as we would call, a second five in Australia. He's an inside centre, but he's really playing like an out half. So hitting Beale, and Beale was going to bring Folau in. And you could just see the pace of the Irish D wasn't allowing that. Up until about the 60th minute, maybe the 55th minute, when Australia started to really come on, the boys were just getting tired. So that brought Australia into the game, but their defence was still solid. So to come back to your point, can Joe change, move this side completely in 18 months? It's going to be really tough, really, really tough to put the skills in that are needed. Now, Leinster are doing it. Can he take it from what Leinster are doing and move it forward? Yeah, maybe, but it's still going to be a tough gig.
Do you sense, Andy, that he will do it?
I don't think he will. I think he's going to and he probably doesn't have reason to based on his results. We're being cautious after such a successful year.
So low-risk rugby works?
Clearly, yeah, it does. The problem arises, and no one's going to question it when we keep winning, the problem arises when you get physically matched. What are the alternatives? And you will get physically matched, and we've got physically matched before. The first test being a great example. Now, we may have been a bit tired from travelling over. There's probably a few excuses there in that first week. But we did get physically, we weren't matched. We were physically dominated in the first test. And we have one other little kind of innovative tool in our toolbox to pull out and be creative in the event we were physically matched? No, we didn't in that first test. So that is cause for concern. But there are, if we look at what Schmidt did after the last World Cup, or certainly what his biggest complaint was, that we didn't have the strength and depth. And to his credit, he's developed that 32 guys on the tour. I think 31 got game time, apart from Ross Byrne, who sat on the bench today. You're looking at our front row. John Ryan deserves great credit. He was the only guy who was able to keep the Australian Loosehead Robertson under some kind of control at the scrum. It's great to see a guy like John Ryan coming through. We've got 4 hookers now. We've got Tyg Byrne coming into the back row, which is we're well served in. We're looking to develop, whether it's Carberry or Byrne behind Sexton, and we've got a multitude of options in the wing 3/4 area. So we've developed strength and depth without a shadow of a doubt. I suppose the question mark is, are we developing the skill level within the group? Because there's a huge capacity within that group. I actually believe, and maybe I'm a bit of a blue sky thinker and a dreamer, I think that group of players can play a creative and skillful style. I just not sure if Joe's going to actually kind of push the boat out on that. I think he might play his cards a bit closer to his chest and maintain with the kind of more belligerent style.
On some of the talking points from today's game then, Matt, the yellow card for Israel Folau, you look at the reaction online from it shouldn't have been any sort of card to yellow was right to actually this was extremely dangerous play and he was lucky not to get away with a red. Where do you fall down this?
Mate, let me address that then, officiating. If you look at it, CJ Standers lifts Omani up. Israel Folau contests the ball in a split second. He does touch Omani. Does he mean to pull him down? No, he doesn't. But he pivots on CJ's lift. If CJ wasn't there, he would have fallen down, but not in the same manner. Look, I think that rugby's a collision sport, and sometimes people get hurt, and that was one of those ones. I think CJ definitely contributed to it. I don't believe it was a yellow card. I think it was a bad decision. Look, I thought the officiating right across the series in New Zealand and Australia has been really poor. I don't believe they're cheating. I don't believe they're favouring one team. I just think that there's too much for one referee The TMOs are getting it wrong. Like, I'll give you an example. The last penalty against Australia, that breakdown, the Johnny Sexton kick, that's not a penalty. The player is clearly on his feet. If anything, it's a penalty to Australia. You know, that changes the game. So Australia, instead of moving up the field, having a crack for 3 points to win the game, they've got to score a try. Why give a penalty that's not there? I thought there was so much officiating across all 3 games that was just wrong. And people saying, you know, everyone's got their goggles on, you know, the wallaby goggles or the green and white goggles. It wasn't cheating or wasn't favouring one side or the other. There was just a litany of errors, and today there was a litany of errors, in my opinion.
Can I put the green and white goggles on? Matty, Matty coached us, as he mentioned, 20 years ago in Leinster, and he was a stickler for discipline with referees. And Czech is a growler at referees. He never stops, and he's petulant. And his team conceded 25 penalties in the last 3 halves of the series, which is an outrageous amount of penalties. If you see a spoiled kid on the street shouting and throwing ice cream at other kids, you don't think, well, he's a spoiled kid. You probably think that, but you say, what are his parents like? Czech has developed a team that have no discipline, that don't respect the referee, and it's plain to see that they're losing the battle. Whether the referee gets it right on every occasion, they're losing that silent battle that goes on off the field, the impression they're making on referees away from, you know, the heat of battle. Whatever it is, they're losing that battle. 25 penalties in 3 halves of international rugby is an outrageous stat.
And Matt, that is sheer indiscipline. These aren't tactical penalties they're giving away far out the pitch. So many of these penalties that they're giving result in Ireland getting a score. When you look at, as Andy said, Czech in the box, and when they're going in for their review session on Monday or Tuesday, like, are they getting it in the neck from Czech about that indiscipline, or actually is he a bit too laissez-faire in his attitude towards those indiscretions?
Mate, I think Czechs would be giving it to them left, right and centre. Look, that's the way he played the game, the way he has always been. As a passionate man, throws himself about emotionally, always has as player and coach. I agree totally with Andy that there has been absolute indiscipline from the Australians. Those penalties in the series where they're tackling the player without the ball, just before half time, you know, was the second row coming over the side there. I mean, they're just first-rate, dumb penalties. I've got no idea why they did them. I guess my point is not making excuses for the Wallabies in their ill discipline, but you still got to have your officials making good calls. I just think it's time for root and branch change with our officials. We need to take it away from referees. A lot of them are lawyers by training, and they want to be independent. This independent judiciary. We've still got roughly the same structure we had 100 years ago. You know, there's definitely got to be a second official on the field. We've got to change the way they're assessed and trained, and who we recruit into them. There's just way too many refereeing errors in the game. Not taking anything away from what Andy said. I agree. If Australia give away that many penalties in a couple of weeks' time against New Zealand, they'll get beaten by 60. They were the architects of their own demise. And you only have to look at the penalties that Johnny Sexton kicked and when and what they came from to support Andy's statement.
The decisions today followed on from earlier this morning then in the France-New Zealand game, where we had this farcical situation where John Lacey ends up blocking the French tackler and Damien McKenzie goes straight in under the post. There's no question that the French tackler is going to get to McKenzie. Now maybe New Zealand go on and get the try either way. John Lacey doesn't even want to have a look. Technically, under the rules, it seems he may have been right that there's no law saying that if you block the tackler, you go back, but if you were to block the attacking player, you would. Like, even the New Zealand commentators couldn't believe this, Matt, what had happened and that the try was allowed stand. Is this simply a case of poor refereeing, or actually is John Lacey just going by the letter of the law?
I think you got a bit of both. I thought referee Lacey's positioning on that scrum was diabolical. There's no way he should have been where he is. But my understanding is he's right. And we were always coached, and I always coach my players, run straight at the referee. There's a hole where the referee stands. He's got every right to be on the field. He's part of the game. And just run at him. And there's a hole. And, you know, we can call New Zealand, there's a lot of things, but But not being smart's not one of them. They ran straight at him. But he should never have been there. He should never have been in that position.
Do referees have too much personality in rugby? Every time we sit down for Six Nations, we look at the referee announcement and straight away you go, oh, well, Rowan Pott referees the breakdown this way, Nigel Owens referees it this way, rather than it just be... It feels as though it's open to interpretation, which then leads on to frustration, which then leads on to constant bickering after a game as to how a match was refereed.
Oh, well, I agree. Schmidt does his research on every referee prior to the games, and he'll have a memo, and it'll be a very significant document on each referee and the style in which he chooses to interpret a breakdown. You've then got to take the Southern Hemisphere style. Is this guy coming from South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, or is he French? Is he coming out of the top 14? How are they interpreting laws within their own league? Then you're basically climbing up your own backside, and you're like, is there no across the board plain language assessment that we can use, as opposed to, well, I like to interpret it as I'll give 2 extra seconds at the breakdown. I mean, I'm playing rugby a long time, and since I've left, I've been coaching at an amateur level, and prior to every game, the referee comes in, he's a chat with the 5 front rows, and he says, this is how I like to referee. And he has this chat with every game prior to, and it's not always the same stuff. So you would argue the rules are not changing. So why is the referee's interpretation of the rule changing? It is. Maybe we should make them a little less charismatic and just play the rules exactly as they are. It's very, very tricky. It's a fine line to get exactly right. I suppose rules are there to a point to players are going to find a way to try and break them, and then there's the referee needs to keep a flow in a game, and he needs to keep all those intangibles running as well. But I think there is a little bit too much interpretation across the board at international level.
Matt, did Pascal Gazere have any choice but to yellow card Israel Folau, considering, all right, he was perfectly entitled to go up and contest, but Peter O'Mahony's 8-9 feet in the air, and he does have just a little touch on the arm, which means that O'Mahony goes down really heavily, and ultimately his game is over.
Exactly, but it shouldn't be on what happens to Peter. Sometimes you get collisions, and that's just the way it is. It's why did Peter fall over? So he has to decide. So after last week with Benjamin Fall in France, the World Rugby's put a new, it's clarified that, as long as you're going to contest the ball, it's okay. Now they're saying after he contests the ball, his hand hits Peter's ribs, and it definitely does. There's no argument about that. But if CJ's only got a one-handed lift on him, and he pivots on CJ's lift. Now, we've got all time to talk about this and look about it, and the poor old ref's got a split second. But in my opinion, that contributed, the lift that CJ had on him, definitely contributed to the way that Peter fell. So it shouldn't be judged on the falling of the player. It should be judged on what did Israel Folau, by rubbing his hand across his chest, across his ribs, force him to spin in the air and land on his back and get concussed. Look, it blatantly didn't. He touched him, but if CJ had a two-handed grip on him or no grip on him, Peter would have landed much more on his feet. And therefore, again, referee has to do all these things in a split second. And this is what I mean. If we were playing basketball, there's 2 referees. Water polo, there's 2. NFL, I think there's 9 active officials on the field. We still put 90% of our decision-making in one guy with a whistle. He gets to the breakdown, he's got to say, does the guy roll away first? Does he then place the ball? What does the first arriving player do? What does the second arriving player do? How can he look for the offside behind him? Every single international team is offside at the ruck. Every single international team is offside because they know the referee can't see them. So the number 4 defender shoots out to stop the 10, and as an old 10, Andy will tell you, you haven't got any time on the ball. That's why teams can't attack. The officiating, the way it's structured, the way it's interpreted, and the way it's run needs complete review. And this series has been a great example of it in New Zealand and Australia. Not so much in South Africa, there's been a few things, but certainly New Zealand and Australia, the 6 tests with France and Ireland, Australia and New Zealand, officiating has been talked about way too much. And I've got to say, it definitely affected the outcome of games in the series, in my opinion. And that's a shame, because it's a great series, really close series. Ireland, wonderful win. But referees shouldn't be affecting the outcome. And unfortunately they are.
Just before we leave that particular incident then, so CJ Stander is entitled to lift Peter O'Mahony there, but it's very different from lifting somebody in a line-out. You don't have somebody coming at you at full speed, jumping at the same time. It does feel as though there's a huge risk to Peter O'Mahony in that move. Because as it was only a slight touch from Folau, whether he meant it or not.
There were a couple of things. I think Bernard Foley took those restarts. They were incredible. The skill level to get the ball as high as he did and as shallow. It's landed on the 10 metre. It's clearly a play that's designed entirely around Israel Folau, who has this freakish athleticism, and he is literally getting 6-7 foot in the air, 2 hands high, AFL kind of skill level, GAA style.
Well, he contested that with Peter O'Mahony being lifted. Absolutely.
And there's a great there's a YouTube clip of the Beast, the South African guy Tendai Matawira, and it's a famous clip. You can see it on YouTube where there's a restart where he's holding up one, I think it's a second row, and he's playing in a Super 15 game, but the guy catches the ball, falls back over Matawira's head, and he just holds on to him because he's got freakish strength, and he rolls him back over his head like a rag doll and places him back on the ground. But it is a very extreme example of, I suppose, the responsibility that the lifter has. Stander has great strength. He didn't actually hold on with enough probably control of O'Mahony, which definitely contributed to O'Mahony. It happened 3 times. It happened the first 2 times O'Mahony went up in the air. They were horrific looking landings. I was looking behind my eyes, behind my hands really, like to see did he stand up. It took the 3rd one before the referee penalised, and I actually think it was a little harsh. I think if you look at Folau's line of vision, his everywhere, he never took his eyes off the ball, and naturally in the air, 7 feet off the ground, you're going to flail your arms a bit. He didn't grab and hold on to the jersey, he made contact. I thought if anything was a penalty but not a yellow card.
I do want to talk about the many good things that Ireland did to win this series, but early in the second half Ireland goes 17-9 up. At that stage, Australia really do seem to be becoming very indisciplined. But then out of nothing, the game seemed to turn back in Australia's favour and put huge pressure on Ireland over the next 20-25 minutes. Why did that happen?
Well, our scrum, I think Tadhg Furlong initially had one of his best initial 20-minute periods we've seen at test level. He carried for 2 or 3 line breaks. He did an incredible clear out at a ruck of Hooper, which in a I suppose you don't want to sound unfair, but it was great to see Hooper getting absolutely slammed to the point that he couldn't contest for the ball. Now it did affect him, we don't wish injury on a player, but those guys are asking to be cleaned out vigorously, and Furlong smashed
It's the only way to deal with them.
Yeah, and Furlong smashed them, and they need that, and it's the old he'll think twice about doing it again. He pulled a hamstring, it looked like it, and his game was over. And they're kind of contributions that you see from Furlong that are incredible, and a number of players did it, but he started to tire, and the scrum started to tire as well. And I think that's one of the reasons Australia came back into the game in that period. They did move the ball around well, and I think particularly they started to get a few offloads away, and as we got physically tired, given the relentlessness of our attack, our defence, which is very, very aggressive today in particular, and as a group we came off the line with huge line speed. Very hard to maintain it over an 80-minute period, along with that scrum issue that happened it was only 5 to 10 minutes, and in fairness Schmidt got Ryan on the field very, very quickly to try and address it, which he did. But I think that was the catalyst for Australia's return back into the game.
Matt, I was saying to Andy off air before we came in that you become so used to watching a Joe Schmidt side that when you're watching Australia in the last 20 minutes putting the pressure on, it almost feels like they're taking these massive risks, passing the ball inside the opposition 22. When Michael Cheika is sitting back and reflecting on why they didn't win this game, their attack in the last 22 was it just a bit of composure that was lacking, or was it just great Irish defence?
A bit of both. I felt Australia were rushing at times, even that very last play where the Stockdale came up and the question was whether did it hit his arm or not. Even on that last play, I didn't think they had to play that then. They still, they were very much in control. they'd carried the ball almost 60 metres. They only had 5 metres to go. And why rush? And I think that was pretty typical of the Australians. They want to play Ireland wide. Everyone wants to play Ireland wide because of the defensive system that Ireland have. And I think Ireland have been vulnerable down that last channel, that last 5 metres of their defensive system. And Australia were always going to go there. But to Ireland's credit, they stopped them. Now, you've also got Robbie Henshaw, who's a world-class 12, having to play 13. And it's just a different world defensively. 13 is the hardest position in the world, in the team to defend in. And Robbie's a really fantastic player, and I really respect him and love watching him play. But to play 13 is hard. He does a job for Ireland there because he's so high quality a player. But with he and Bundyaki, you've got 2 inside centres. Last week, when you saw you had Ringrose there, they shut Australia down. It was a matter of time till Australia started to get some possession with the penalties, as Andy said, and then put pressure on. And they were getting within that 5-6 metres, but not taking it. I thought they should have taken those penalties rather than kick for touch once or twice, and then obviously the penalty that Foley missed. But Australian sides are that's the way we play, and that's you've got to play your natural game, and eventually that will come. They'll go and play 3 Test series against New Zealand this year. They'll get walloped in one. They'll be close in another, and they'll go very close to winning a third. That's the nature of that game. But here's the key to it. For me, in this whole thing, we're talking about the series. If you're going to win anything big in the world, you've got to beat New Zealand. So you've got to figure out a way to beat them. Now, Australia lose to them 9 times out of 10, but we get them on the 10th. If Ireland keep playing that style, they won't get them on the 10th. That, to me, with the World Cup looming, at the end of that series, that's the thing that smacked me. Great win, good series. Put the Lansdowne Cup in the trophy cabinet back at Lansdowne Road. Well done. Have a good holiday, boys. But how are you going to beat New Zealand when you have to in 18 months? That question's not answered.
Matt, stick with us for a few minutes. Andy as well. I want to take a quick break. I do want to talk about who the big winners were and who the losers were from this tour from Joe Schmidt's point of view. Just some results in as well in the football qualifiers, the first of today's games. A 27-point win for Monaghan. They beat Waterford by 5-21 to 9 points. In the ladies' Munster football final, it finished Cork 5-13, Kerry 2-10, and in the Christy Ring Cup final, Kildare 3-19, London 1-11 was the full time. Arthur Lanigan O'Keefe has won a bronze medal at the Modern Pentathlon World Cup final, and at the World Cup, Belgium 5-2 winners against Tunisia. Quick break and plenty more rugby to come.
Join the conversation. Text us on 53106. Texts cost 30 cents.
As America loses its way, Amnesty International needs your support more than ever to safeguard human rights. Visit amnesty.ie.
You should definitely call your ex at 4 in the morning. Sure, she hasn't heard from you in ages.
I think you should tell your boss exactly what you think of her. She'll appreciate your honesty.
That boa constrictor would make a great family pet. The kids will love it.
Not all advice is created equal. At financialbroker.ie, we're the experts in professional, impartial financial advice. So for advice on life insurance, pensions and investments, and everything in between, find your local financial broker at financialbroker.ie.
Hi, I'm Brendan Kavanagh, CEO of GDPRcourse.com. GDPR became law on Friday, May 25th. Are you worried that your business, volunteer organisation or club is at risk of being fined? We now run daily accredited GDPR practical implementation courses at our nationwide training facilities. This course gives members of your organisation tasked with GDPR the practical tools to implement and maintain GDPR compliance. Don't get ripped off by expensive consultants. Go to GDPRcourse.com.
At Centra, we're celebrating summer with fantastic offers across the store. Get grilling with mix and match barbecue meats, 3 for €10. Pringles selected range 200 gram, 2 for €3 or €2 each. And Emotivo Pinot Grigio was €10, now €7. Centra, live every day. Enjoy call sensibly.
You're in the market for 182, but which 182 is the right choice for you? You need a car that's reliable and efficient, but you want sleek design and incredible performance, all at a price that you can handle. And there's one German brand that ticks all those boxes. Opel, the smart choice for your 182. And when you choose Opel, we give you even more choice. Choose 0% PCP or HP finance, up to €5,000 scrappage across the range, or 5 years free servicing. An exciting and reliable new car that comes with an impressively generous 182 offer? Well, that's just the German in us. Visit your local Opel dealership for more. Opel, the future is everyone's. Terms and conditions apply.
It's one of the great London derbies and it's coming to Dublin. Arsenal versus Chelsea, Aviva Stadium, Wednesday, August 1st. See the stars of two of the Premier League's leading teams as they do battle in the International Champions Cup. Tickets on sale now from Ticketmaster.ie. Booking fee applies. Don't miss out. Get your tickets early. Arsenal v Chelsea, August 1st. Kick-off 8:05 p.m.
The Pamela Scott Shoe and Accessory Sale is now on in all stores nationwide and online at PamelaScott.com. That's right, up to 50% off shoes and accessories in all Pamela Scott, Ashley Reeves and Lisa Perkins stores nationwide. The Pamela Scott Shoe and Accessory Sale is now on. Shop in store and online now.
Bruce Betting are one of Ireland's leading bookmakers. Download the iOS app today to see why Bruce Betting are giving you more for World Cup 2018. Bruce Betting, your World Cup bookmaker. In store, online, and now on your phone. Please gamble responsibly. See dunlewy.net.
When summer comes, water calls. Friends and families. Lakes, rivers, and beautiful beaches. Joy, freedom, fun. But water hides dangers. Rip currents, cold water shock, slippery rocks, unexpected depths. In seconds, water can steal a life. I'm Liam Neeson for Irish Water Safety. This is National Water Safety Awareness Week. Let's bring the number of drownings in Ireland down. For tips and advice, visit iws.ie.
1,500 coolers ready to hire from HSS Hire. Get up to 50% off a range of cooling fans, air conditioners and coolers, perfect for domestic, retail and industrial use. Call us today on 1-800 22 33 66. Visit hss.ie or drop into one of our branches nationwide. HSS Hire, you're better equipped.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
You're welcome back. So Ireland have won a test series in Australia for the first time since 1979, a 20 points to 16 win in a gruelling third test in Sydney. We're joined in the studio by Andy Dunne. Matt Williams is on the line as well. Get your reaction into 53106, and there is quite a bit of reaction coming in suggesting that we're being a little bit negative, Andy, about Ireland, who have just won a test series in Australia.
I feel pretty positive that we've won. I feel we're just pointing out a couple of potential issues down the line, but we can all have a big party about it and cheer now. But we're here to analyse some of the technical stuff too, and there are problems. But
yeah, talk to us then about on the technical stuff, but in a positive sense. Joe Schmidt brought this group to Australia, wanted to learn some things about some players, guys he could trust, adding some depth to his squad. Who are the players who've really stood out and have put forward their case that when it comes to November internationals, when New Zealand come to Dublin, that they could be in the reckoning for a start or even have forced their way into the 23?
Well, to start in the front row, for me, John Ryan did superbly. We've now got Herring, Scannell, unfortunately for Cronin, who's had a horrible month.
Yeah, and got that injury before kick-off.
Yeah, and I would have thought he's probably so on edge to prove himself. The type of injury he's picked up, a grade 1 hamstring tear, it's just probably exertional. He's probably sprinting around like a headless chicken trying to impress Joe in training, and he's picked up something. He's realised he's not assured of a place where he is in Leinster, so he's probably got to manage that for himself. However he does, it's something you see often in players picking up soft tissue injuries, probably just through enthusiasm and exertion in training. But in terms of the winners, to answer that question, front row wise, we've certainly developed a couple of guys that weren't on the radar prior to the tour. Tyke Byrne has, I suppose, matched expectations in terms of his contributions when he's come in. He's perceived to be very high calibre, and he's regularly coming in with man of the match games for the Scarlets, but then to go and do something similar at the international level is a step up, and he's matched those expectations, I feel.
From your understanding of how Joe works, because some of these players didn't spend a huge amount of time on the pitch, and Tadhg Beirne's probably one of them. Is it 50-50 between training and performance on the pitch, or how does that weigh up? So even though Tadhg Beirne didn't get to start the games he would have wanted and didn't get to maybe the full minutes on the pitch, can you do enough in training just to prove, I'm comfortable at this level?
Well, I think that's what Joe is trying to develop, with 32 guys getting game time down in Australia. If you'd asked us about a year ago who's the starting Irish 15, you'd probably name 13 of them within a split second. He's trying to create doubt among his team, which is, to me, is a superb way to motivate a group. You see it, I've seen it so successfully in the past. Brian Cody, notably in Kilkenny. Jim Gavin is doing it with the Dubs. Fergie set a record with United, 77 Premiership games consecutively without the same starting 11. And what it does is create a level of doubt within players that I better pitch up at training. That mightn't have been there, I surmise that, but it mightn't have been there a year ago in Irish training. It certainly seems to be something that's developing now, and you might get casualties. You see the English squad have had a number of casualties in under Eddie Jones' training regime. Perhaps it's competition for places that's bringing that. So, out in the back line, to be honest, there were positives. One that surprised me was I thought Stockdale underperformed on the tour, having had such a brilliant Six Nations. And I think my query question mark around Stockdale is he's a superb finisher, which we haven't always had in Irish rugby. If he's given the ball with work to do, has he the ability to create space for himself? When he was faced with challenges in that first test, he kicked the ball away aimlessly. Today, he did get a bit of front football. He did make a lot of ground. But I would say where he wasn't questioned all that much in the Six Nations. I think the Aussie tour maybe exposed a few areas of weakness in his game. But other than that, I think the big finds are up front as opposed to in the back line.
Matt, would you go along with that? Is it the front row where Joe Schmidt has added a little bit of depth, and has he learned anything about his backline options?
A bit. I was very happy that Joey Carberry got that start in the first test. We know Bundyaki is a very, very competent inside centre, but we also know that Henshaw and Ringrose are definitely the best starting centres. Now, with Farrell out at the moment, in my opinion, you've only got one real, genuine outside centre at international level, which is Ringrose. When Ireland have Ringrose at 13, defensively and offensively, they're a different team. Because of what we said before, it's just such a specialist role, and he's a genuine 13, like Brian O'Driscoll was, and Jason Little and these guys. They're not 12s, they're 13s, and Andy knows exactly what I'm saying. It's just a different role. Second part, Conway, shame he got injured, but I'm pretty certain he can step up. We're still blooding Lama. He's not the finished article, and just giving these kids time and giving them little bits of time. They need to develop and move on. A bit more time with Leinster next season, and then perhaps that test, the mid test that's not a strong test in the November series. You give all these guys some more time. I think Joe's done a really, really good job in blooding guys, except at the halves. Now, I personally would have loved to have rested Conor Murray and give the other boys a go, just like they did at hooker. The exact same principle at hooker. I think Cronin's the number 2 hooker, but Joe was trying to develop 3 and 4. If we think to when New Zealand won the World Cup, you had Aaron Cruden injured and Dan Carter injured. Their number 1 and number 2 out halves were injured. They had to get your man back from fishing to kick the winning goal to win a World Cup. Yeah, and so you've got to develop depth in those areas, and I give great credit to Joe for doing it, except at 9 and 10. And why? Because Connor and Johnny are just the best. Besides the New Zealanders, they're the best half pairing in the world. And would they have won the series without them there? No, they wouldn't. But then you've got to weigh up what's more important in the long run. It's not an exact science. It's not easy, and I think Joe's done some real positive things. But I certainly would have liked to see our halves get more time, because if something happens in a big game to them, trouble with a capital T.
Is it understandable why he doesn't move Murray and Sexton out and doesn't take a few more risks and promote the other players and give them some game time? Like, if you look at Australia, every team has key players. If they were to go into a World Cup without Pocock and Hooper, they may well struggle. Is that simply just the case with Ireland, that Murray and Sexton are at such a high level that when they're fit you play them no matter what?
Yeah, I think it's pretty understandable. It's easy to argue about bringing guys in, but at international level, he's 10, 11 games to the World Cup. He's naturally going to be judged probably just on results. I don't agree with it, though. I'd agree with Matt. I think if it's managed well in terms of even the message that goes to the public, potentially, and you say, look, okay, what we need to do is we need to develop in 9 and 10, and we're going to give one or two guys a rest. I think the public, Joe has enough credibility and belief and positive attitude from the public, and hopefully from his employers at this stage, that if he turns around and says, look, I need to give a couple of guys key games and starts and keep them on the field for 80 minutes in order to give us a greater chance at the next World Cup, I don't think anyone's going to have a problem. But it's not something that's been mooted.
Is the concern then that we don't really know how this affects Kieran Marmie and John Cooney mentally, that if they are thrust into the action, is it always in the back of their minds that, well, he doesn't even trust me in these end of season tests, really doesn't want me here at a World Cup game?
I don't know. I don't think those young players are going to feel like that. I think those young players are going to have a level of respect for Conor and Johnny ahead of them, and a level of respect for the coaching decisions. I think they've got to be hungry to push their way in. They've got to be grouchy in training. They've got to learn from the best. But if we look at New Zealand right now, we keep harping on back to them, but they've Beauden Barrett out injured, who plays a very different style to Johnny Sexton. Beauden Barrett gets injured, and Damien McKenzie comes in this morning and looks lethal. He comes off after 67 minutes, and Richie Mo'unga comes in, and he's been on the Super 15, absolutely lighting it up. And behind them, there's a guy called Lima Sopoanga, who's played with Otago. All four are small, fast, elusive, passing, sidestepping, all guns, all glory type 10s. None of them are strategic. None of them are good kickers. And you look at what's happening as a style, what's evolving over there that is different to us. And we look at a CEO, executive, one man at the top, kind of pyramid, all roads lead to Johnny. And it's no wonder that everybody's going after him. The first line out, the tail of the line out, the Aussie number 3 absolutely hammered into him. And Johnny's resilient and physical, but he's lying on the floor in pain again. And the reason you're not seeing Beauden Barrett on the ground all day is because teams can't keep targeting, is because they vary the point of attack. There's a dilution of responsibility across the team to make decisions and to be a strike runner and to be strikers in different areas. And that's a potential issue because we drive our team. It's driven brilliantly by Johnny and Conor.
So that puts them at more risk.
It puts them at a huge risk, and it puts us at risk of losing them because everyone's going after them. Again, probably sounds negative, but ultimately I'm saying these guys are incredible players. They're outstanding, and we've chosen to have a very dictatorial style on field, and it's very traditional. I mean, everybody harped back on to 1979 about when we last won in Australia, and the reason we won was because Ollie Campbell played in a very strategic way as opposed to Tony Ward. Willie Duggan famously said, Tony runs up his own arse. There's a comment like that, and nobody knows where he's going to be next. So if you've got a bunch of people doing that, it's very tricky also. So I just fear that we're in a little bit of over-reliance, and we haven't quite developed Joey. The move to Munster, maybe that'll happen now.
Did you like Johnny's captaincy when Peter O'Mahony was down and he said to the referee, I know you don't like me, you're going to have to talk to me now?
Yeah, it was classic Sexton in terms of being a grump, but look, his captaincy is, whether he's the armband on or not, he's very much a captain and leader within the group. I think he's developed a self-awareness around his grumpiness with referees, and he needs to row it back. He does remind us of Roy Keane. I think Keane was on last night with Martin O'Neill saying he learned later on in his career he needed to quieten down with the refs, but there's also a balance between being competitive as well, and you don't need to be completely quiet.
Matt, just before we let you go then, and again, you're automatically positive when you win a test series, and you are looking ahead because everybody's got the World Cup in mind. Is the concern then with Ireland that other teams have been in periods of transition and are coming to an end of those periods very well stocked, and that they're going to peak in September 12 months, whereas there's a slight concern with Ireland that actually this may be the peak, that this season may be the peak, and that we're not 100% sure that there's going to be something extra, that there's going to be an extra layer to this next season?
Look, I think the first thing is it's the greatest season in Irish rugby, it's history, and they all deserve massive credit, phenomenal credit. And the next part is then how do you match it? Now, you looked at that Leinster side, and they have grown and developed all year. I know it's not international rugby. But you can see the growth in that team and the changing forward movement of that side and how young they are. Ireland, except for the first half at Twickenham, when they were simply sensational. It's the best half of rugby I've seen from an Irish side. Well, I said to Shane Horgan there, we were talking once, and we couldn't remember a better first half. It was just phenomenal. So they've got it in them. But unless they get used to bringing it out in tough circumstances, they're not going to grow and move on. So I think we've got to, and I think I'm always trying to be positive. I don't hope the people at home sending texts being negative. I'm not. I'm saying Ireland can win a World Cup. Like, you can't get more positive than that. We can win a World Cup. This team is capable. They've got talent. They've got depth, as Andy's pointed out. We've got front row. We've got a scrum. We've got attackers. We've got a sensational line out. A line out that good. I don't know if you noticed, Australia refused to kick the ball out. They kept kicking the ball in to make them play counter-attack rugby. But the style of play, they have to grow and move forward. So I certainly hope they can. I certainly want them to. But it is, at the end of the year, with all the trophies in the cabinet, it's wonderful. The question now is the ultimate challenge. The ultimate challenge is the World Cup. Can you grow? Can you move? Can you go into it? Because last World Cup, everyone was talking it up, but they weren't playing the style of rugby that can win a World Cup. But what a challenge as a player. And everyone else shouldn't be out there saying, oh, you're negative. No, here's your challenge as a young man. Here's your challenge as a team. Win a World Cup. Here, you've got the opportunity. Opportunity will never come again in your lifetime. Grab it with both hands and take it. And that's what we all should be saying to Joe. Take a risk.
And where do you think Australia will be then in 15 months' time? These disciplinary problems on the pitch, the ill discipline we've seen over this test series, do you reckon Cheika can quash that actually it's a far more disciplined Australia side over the next 15 months that arrive in Japan?
Mate, I'll be really honest. I wanted Australia to win today, not because of the series. Rugby in the country of my birth and rugby in Sydney in particular brought me up. So when I'm back home, I try to put back into the system and coach kids like Andy's doing. I coach a very good bunch of under-18s back there, and I love it. I really enjoy it. It gives me a lot of reward. But rugby in Sydney is dying. The game is dying in Sydney. At the bottom, from the bottom up, and it breaks my heart, to be really honest with you. That's why I wanted Australia to win today, to help that system, to give the grassroots, to give them heroes at the top that they'll admire. Australia will always put out a very competitive 23 players at the top end. They're excellent at it. That they astound me that with all the problems that are in Australian rugby, last year we almost beat New Zealand in a 3-test series. They lost the first one by more than 50, should have won in Dunne and then did win. They will put out a highly competitive side. Michael Cheika, like Joe Schmidt, has blooded a huge number of players. If you look at the number of players he's put through in the last 2 or 3 years, it's quite staggering. And they're building up some really good depth. Again, like Ireland, except at 9 and 10. We don't have a lot of quality 9 and 10s coming through our system. Andy, will not believe the stat, but I have not seen a 10 at under 18 level, at schoolboy level, playing for Australian schools that can kick both feet in 6 years. So our skill levels down there are dying. That's why Bernard Foley is just so essential. Who goes in next? You'd have to move Beale back in. They got no one, and there's no one coming through the system. So below that in Australian rugby, we've got huge issues that the ARU are not listening to and that people aren't listening to. The top end, mate, they'll be competitive. They'll be highly competitive. There's no accident they played some tests up in Japan. There's no accident they go, we'll spend a lot of time up there. They're ready for that World Cup, and that's their goal, as it always is in Australia. The World Cup is where they do it. Remember, they made the final. How they did that last World Cup was truly remarkable. They'll be very, very competitive, as they are.
Matt, great stuff as always. Thanks a lot for joining us this afternoon.
Pleasure, and let me say what a pleasure it is to talk to Andy Dunne again. Great player, great bloke. Lovely to see you guys. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Matt. Now you'll leave the studio feeling good about yourself, won't you?
Flattery gets him everywhere.
Did he pick you every time?
He picked me very rarely.
It's easy to say 20 years on.
The old Bill Clinton charm.
Andy, great stuff as always. We probably won't talk to you for a while now. We'll take a break from this rugby lark, even though,
you missed
as
me.
I was saying, I see Leinster were back in pre-season training yesterday.
Yeah, I actually felt sorry for them. Can you imagine?
Yeah, there's been a few celebrations, no doubt, for some of those
I think
lads.
they should give them another week off or two.
We will miss you, Andy, but I'm sure we'll talk to you again come September. Cheers to that. All right, quick break, and then we're looking at the World Cup.
Nice. Cheers,
Andy. Thanks for that.
No worries.
That was good.
Soon.
Yeah.
Good luck.